Morning glory and evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome to hour 2 of today's program. Great new book out, How to Test Negative for Stupid and Why Washington Never Will, by Senator John Kennedy. If you're an aficionado of Fox News and any other cable station, you've seen Senator Kennedy a lot because he's the funniest man in the Senate, and I don't think anyone will be mad at me for saying that. But he's also very sly, because you would not know he got his master's or his second law degree from Oxford's Magdalen College after doing Louisiana Tech, Vanderbilt, UVA, Fifth Circuit clerkship, then Oxford. So that's all an act. Senator Kennedy, welcome. Good to have you. Congratulations on How to Test Negative for Stupid. Very funny book. But I also now know what a bush hog means, or to bush hog. That's a verb, to bush hog, right?
Yeah, thanks, Hugh. Look, the book is not, it's not a policy book per se. It's a story book. I use stories to talk about policy, and some of the stories are funny, some are bizarre. They're all true. I use stories to make 3 points. I try to tell and explain to people what the inside of the Senate's really like, to try to explain to people why in Washington, D.C., normal is just a setting on the clothes dryer, and to try to explain to folks why it doesn't have to be that way if we have a return to some common sense. I hope the book is, I think it's far-reaching. I hope it makes people think. I hope it makes them laugh. It could make them day drink.
No, I don't think it's going to do that. I think it's going to make them laugh, and therefore I think it's going to make them take you very seriously. The funniest line, by the way, people nominate funny lines all the time. Here's how long I've known Mark McKinnon. I knew him when he was poor. I hope there's no index in the book, so unless he reads it, he's not going to see that line, but that's a very funny line. You and Senators Cotton, Cruz, and Lee, I've decided, should have a book club about the Dormant Commerce Clause of the 11th Amendment. I did not realize you had spent this much time practicing law, learning law, and conflicts of law at Oxford. What were you thinking when you signed up for Sir John Morris?
Well, Sir John he's passed, but he was the leading authority in the world on the conflicts of laws. I had another professor named Sir Rupert Cross. He's now deceased, but he was the leading expert in the world on evidence. But look, I practiced law a long time, but I also taught law for 15 years, part-time at LSU Law School. So I like the law. It's
well, I do too, and I teach part-time, but I teach constitutional law, so I can pretend to know whatever issue comes up. I did last night when I'm going to ask you this. You're a con law lawyer. President has taken out the drug cartel boats. This does not bother me in the least. The commander-in-chief power has some limits in some areas, but that's not one of the areas in which it's limited. Do you agree with me?
Yes. And in fact, I had lunch with Marco Rubio. Several of us did in the Senate. I don't know, it's been about 3 weeks ago. And Senator, still call him Senator Marco, but the secretary is a good lawyer. We asked him, I said, are you on solid legal ground? He said, absolutely. We've researched this thing exhaustively, and attacking these narco terrorists after being declared to be terrorists is perfectly legal. I asked him how certain they were that these were actually narco terrorists. He said, well, I can't explain or tell you about all of our intelligence, but he said, I am 110% certain that these guys are narco terrorists. And our American intelligence is pretty good.
Oh, our signal intelligence is very good. And who knows, we might have someone inside the cartel. I'm just glad to hear you say that. Now I want to go back to
Marco did say this to us, Hugh. Sorry to interrupt. Marco did say this to us in his typical way. Marco can be humorous himself. He said, and by the way, boat traffic is way, way down. And so I thought that
I think probably the prices on used boats is way, way up right now.
Yeah.
Let me talk to you about Zachary. I thought
Sure.
maybe Zachary, Louisiana had been named after President Zachary Taylor. It turns out I looked it up. It's named after Daryl Zachary, who founded it. It sounds a little idyllic. 20,000 people. You're one of four boys, two doctors. Your brother George is the smart one. Did you embarrass your parents when you went into the law and politics?
Well, my dad particularly didn't want me to go into politics. Zachary, when I grew up, it's about 20,000 people now, but when I grew up, it was about 3,000 people. It
Oh,
was small, one stoplight. The town was so small. We did talk about this in the book. We didn't have a town drunk. Several people had to take turns. Everybody knew everybody. But look, I loved growing up in Zachary. And when I was in high
that
school, I cared about two things: basketball and cheerleaders. And I wasn't very good at either one, but I had fun trying, and I'd go back in a nanosecond.
Well, I think it's a fabulous look at. I think I was born in the best year, 1956. You got a year on me or so, but we were blessed to grow up in a kind of sane era, or be born under Eisenhower and live in a sane area. I got to tell you, 3 and 4 weeks ago, I did two interviews with Justice Barrett. She's
Uh
from
huh.
Nolens, and she made careful to me to make me understand that New Orleans people are not from the South. They're from New Orleans. Now, you dwell on that a little bit in How to Test Negative for Stupid and Why Washington Never Will. Did that come up in her confirmation back and forth with you? Because I'm glad we've got a couple of people from outside the Beltway on the court.
Yes, it did. And let me say, the justice is absolutely brilliant.
Yep.
And she's been a good justice and will continue to be. She went through 3 days of a tough hearing without a single note. We did talk a little bit about New Orleans. New Orleans is it's unlike any other city in America. It's very European. Um, it's very liberal. It's this liberal place in the middle of a very conservative state. I love New Orleans. It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get when you go down there. Now, it's got a lot of problems. It's got crime problems. It's a sanctuary city. The political leadership is to the left of Lenin. It's got an awful lot of problems, but it's a wonderful city.
You quote Tennessee Williams, and you try and excuse yourself for quoting him, but I want people to hear this. America has only three cities: New York, San Francisco, and Nolens. Everything else is Cleveland. Parentheses from Senator Kennedy. If you're from Cleveland, like I am, Senator, I'm from Warren, which is Cleveland adjacent. Get mad at Tennessee, not me. He said it. Well, you didn't have to put it in the book, Senator.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty clever quip from Tennessee Williams. I will
Unless you're,
say this about Cleveland. I've been to Cleveland. I like Cleveland. Cleveland Clinic is one of the best
oh,
examples of our healthcare delivery system in the world.
you are absolutely right. There's a reason everybody with heart trouble goes to Cleveland. Now let's get serious. I want to begin with
Okay.
Billy. Billy is the guy that took you two punches to take him out of the bully business, and then you follow up with the line, "Weakness invites the wolves." It's a good story. I encourage people to read it. Let's jump from there to Xi Jinping, because I don't know a lot of people who've sat across from Xi Jinping and spoken to him as directly as you did. You say in the book that you memorized it, but you encouraged him to be responsible. You also gave I didn't realize he was overweight, and I didn't realize he was surrounded like Emperor Xi sort of stuff. Do you think you got through to him?
I think we got through to him. I don't know that we changed him. Most of the conflicts throughout the world today are orchestrated by President Xi Jinping. Uh, Xi is working with Putin in Russia, with the Ayatollahs in Iran. The quarterback is Xi. Their goal is to have Russia dominate Central and Eastern Europe, to have Iran dominate the Middle East, to have China dominate the Indo-Pacific, Sub-Saharan Africa, and South America. They just didn't factor one thing into their equation: President Trump. He
Yep.
understands that weakness invites the wolf. I do not want America to be the world's policeman, but I don't want Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin or Iran to be either. That's not a world that's safe for Western democracy. Uh, it, they started this effort under President Biden, who was weak as rainwater. He would send his people in there. We were in the middle of a bar fight, and they'd try to quote Socrates. President Trump doesn't do it that way. He makes
No.
them understand that we're the most powerful country in all of human history, and we're going to act that way.
Speaking of President Trump, are you alarmed by our ongoing constitutional crisis of the remodel of the East Wing? I am not. I just want to make sure it's okay with you. You're on judiciary.
Well, I thought Senator Hawley put it best. Josh is a very, very clever guy. One of the liberal media jumped him and said, "Oh, you're destroying history by building a ballroom in the White House." And Josh just leveled him. He said, "Let me get this straight. You people have torn down every statute you can get your hands on in America throughout the world because you didn't like their politics. And you want to talk to us about respect for history? Look, this is what's going on. The ballroom in the White House, the current one, only seats about 80 or 90 people. I've been to a state dinner there. You're packed in like sardines. You have to put up tents outside. It's embarrassing. So the president, like Truman, like Teddy Roosevelt, like a lot of other presidents, President John Kennedy, he made changes. He said, at his expense and at the expense of the private sector, no taxpayer money, he's building a ballroom to house more people. And I think it's a splendid idea. Now, all the members of the liberal media, all of my Democratic friends have their bowels in an uproar over this, but it's totally hypocritical. If it weren't for double standards in Washington, there wouldn't be any standards at all.
Yeah, I want the audience to know President Obama had a $300 million construction project as well at the White House. Sometimes we do not know what's there. I worked there in the 80s, and there are parts of it that people do not know about for national security reasons. And having a ballroom is exactly what Senator Kennedy said. It's an embarrassment, actually, to host a state dinner in a tent. And the East Room does hold about 150 people if you jam them in. So this is good. I want to go to a couple of the things that you said here specifically, but I had a chance last night to run into one of your more unusual colleagues, Senator Fetterman, for the first time. Senator Fetterman is a friend of Selena Zito, so he's my friend. I like Selena a lot. You became a Republican after being a Democrat in a state that went increasingly Republican. Any chance you can convert Senator Fetterman?
Oh, we try repeatedly. Look, John is an independent thinker. That's what many of his colleagues don't like about him. He takes it issue by issue, and he says exactly what he means. He's a little bit like me. We both play outside the pocket. God gave both of us the right to remain silent, but not the ability. I find John refreshing, and not just, I find him refreshing even when I disagree with him. And he's very popular in Pennsylvania. Now, the Democrats will show you poll numbers, but they're only polling the loon wing of the Democratic Party. Among the loon wing of the Democratic Party, yeah, he's not popular. But among Pennsylvanians at large, he's very popular because he's candid and he's frank.
His ideas about immigration pretty much follow yours. Now, I want to talk about corruption because you're hell on wheels on corruption. I did not know this. Beginning with the tenant at your dad's building who sent you the lease uncorrected. I'm a lawyer as well, and that is unusual. And then he asked you to get his dental license renewed. People can read the book and find in How to Test Negative for Stupid. That's not a good way to John Kennedy's heart, is to try and corrupt him. But Louisiana is kind of famous for it. There is corruption right now of a different sort in D.C. You're on Judiciary Committee. Operation Arctic, indict the Republican senators, is coming to light. And this Jack Smith investigation is as bad as anything I've seen in my many years here. I don't think judiciary is necessarily the best place to investigate that. I think maybe a select committee focused just on that operation and Jack Smith and the abuse of the special prosecutor role might stop it from ever happening again. But the idea that, by the way, were they interested in your phone records, or are you too funny to indict?
Well, we don't know yet completely. We're trying to sort it out exactly who. I won't be surprised if I'm somewhere on the list, but we just don't know. We found out this information from a whistleblower, and thank God for Senator Grassley. I found out today. Senator Grassley announced that the whistleblower, and they have the documentation to prove it, that the whistleblower did all this nonsense was signed off on by Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Chris Wray. And I was, Hugh, I was stunned to hear that. I mean, I'm so disappointed. I thought this was just Jack Smith, who went disco, who was acting like a cowboy, out there doing this stuff on his own. But it was all signed off by the Attorney General and the FBI Director. And
That's amazing.
If justice wants to appoint a special prosecutor, I'm fine with that. I just want them to get to the bottom of it, and I want them to get to the bottom of it in the foreseeable future, not sometime in 2083. But I can tell you,
well, that's why I would like a select committee in the Senate, because I do have a wonderful way of focusing the media attention. And I lived through Watergate summer in summer school, and I had the basketball coach as my summer school teacher. And so we just watched 4 hours of Watergate hearings every day. And it had wonderfully effective communication for the American people. And they ought to know what happened in this Arctic investigation, indict all the senators, because that's just way out over the skis. Couple of specific issues. Reporters are like stray dogs. Once you feed them, you can't get rid of them. Page 183. I guess that's true, but you give them a lot. You're pretty good copy, Senator. Are you glad to have them around?
I wouldn't use the word glad. Look, conceptually, I support the media when they act like true journalists. When they act like advocates, I don't. I respect the First Amendment. In my state, Louisiana, I'm sure it's true in every state, journalists who are just interested in the truth have been very instrumental in exposing corruption. But that's not what has happened to the profession here in the last, I don't know, pick your dates, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, now, do I talk to them? Yes, because they're going to write their story anyway, and I want to get my licks in. But it's very frustrating when you talk, particularly the young reporters who've gone right from a woke college campus into a woke newsroom, and they're interested. They already have written their story. They have formed their opinions. They just want to try to get you to confirm their bias. And I won't do that. And I just tell them exactly what I think.
Second bit, again, this came from the speed round at the end of How to Test Negative for Stupid. By the way, Senator, if you want to sell books, you have to say the title of the book 7 times in every interview.
How to Test Negative for Stupid, yeah.
That's it. How to Test Negative for Stupid.
Look, we're doing great. We're number one on Amazon, so I'm really proud of that. I worked hard on this.
Oh, that is impressive. Actually, by the way, I think it's because it's good clips on the back. You didn't get blurbs. You put in good lines. Someone at your publisher or your agent had a pretty good idea. Immigration. Borders are like front doors. You close them not because you hate everyone on the outside, but because you love everyone on the inside. One of the most persuasive, succinct arguments ever. Does it turn the head of any of your Democratic colleagues?
No, because they support open borders. Look, I read that somewhere. I read a column somewhere. I don't remember who said it, but the person who did it made the point. He said the southern border is American people aren't racist. The southern border is like your front door. Most Americans lock their front door at night because not because they hate everybody on the outside, but because they love people on the inside and they want to know who's coming in and out of their house. They're not racist. That's just common sense. But the truth of the matter is that not all Democrats, but the loon wing of the party, which is in control, led by Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, believes in open borders. Now, when it started hurting them politically, they came up with a new expression. But give them all truth serum, and they will tell you. They think that vetting people at the border is racist. I think vetting people at the border is prudent. Every country does it. But these people are crazy as a bedbug. They believe in open borders. They think cops are a bigger problem than criminals. They think our children should be able to change genders at recess. They think that all of us should send every bit of our money and our freedom to Washington, and they will tell us what to do, and they'll spend our money for us because they're smarter and more virtuous than the rest of us. We're just a bunch of smelly Walmart shoppers. That's really the attitude of the loon wing of the Democratic Party. And they're going to continue to get the living hell beat out of them until they realize that the American people are plenty smart.
Now, I hope she runs for president. I hope she gets the nomination. I was in the green room last night when Governor Pritzker was on with Brett Baer, and I conclude that big men ought not to try to do ballet, and politicians from Illinois ought not to try and run for president because he's not very good at it. I want to turn to your ambitions. You're on some interesting committees, Senator. You're on appropriations and banking and judiciary. Now, judiciary is fun, and whenever we have a Supreme Court nominee, it's a lot of fun. But appropriation and banking are serious. Now, Senator Collins is chair of appropriations, and she is formidable, and I think she's going to win. I spent a lot of time in Maine. I think I'd want her on my side in a fight. What is your ambition? You're wearing what line to become chairman of what, and what do you want to do?
What I want to do in appropriations is reduce spending. As you know, our budget is so big that we divide it into 12 mini budgets. I'm in charge of the portion of the budget for energy and water development. Of the 12 bills that we have put together so far under, I don't know if we've done all 12, we've done 10 of them under Senator Collins. Only one of them reduces spending, mine.
Oh.
Every other bill increases spending. Now, sometimes it's only 2 or 3 or 4%, but it still increases spending. And we're going backwards here. And I voted against some of them. And some of my colleagues got upset with me. They said, well, the Democrats have agreed. I don't care. The Democrats' favorite form of spending is more. I've seen this vampire movie. And we've got to reduce spending. And the only person that I have seen in the 9 years I've been in Washington reduce spending is Donald Trump and Russ Vought. They sent us over a rescission package. We rejected the spending that was done under Biden, and I hope they keep sending us rescission packages to get rid of some of the spending porn.
Do you put this down? I did not know that you had spent so long as the head of the Department of Revenue, treasurer, which in fact makes you the head of the budget of the state of Louisiana. Is that why you bring a sharp pencil to this?
Yes. I was raised that way in part, but I'm cheap. I'm tight. I squeak when I walk, man. I'm proud of that. I turned money back in from my budget when I was in state government. And look, this is taxpayer money. It didn't just fall from heaven. We thank heaven for it, but it came out of people's pockets. And no fair-minded person, Hugh, no fair-minded person believes that there's not an enormous amount of waste. I call it spending porn in the federal budget. And no one wants to do anything about it. I've heard Republicans, not just Democrats, but Republicans say this, not publicly, but I've heard them say, nobody ever got beat spending money. And that, you know what? That's how you end up with $38 trillion in debt. And the only person I've seen so far who's been willing to try to do anything about it is President Trump and Russ Vought. And I'm going to
Oh,
keep
they are
supporting
serious.
them.
Now, I have two more questions on how to test negative for stupid, Senator, and they're
Okay.
somewhat whimsical. One is whimsical, one is serious. Since you spent time at Oxford and you rave about it and you got in twice, which is pretty impressive, people have to read the details. I can't understand why you didn't go after Vandy and before law school, but you went after law school and after the clerkship. Have you read Brideshead Revisited, and did you have that kind of an experience at Oxford?
I have read it, but that wasn't exactly the experience. Um,
Yeah.
Oxford, I think, is the greatest university in the world, but it's a very elitist form of education in the sense that you have very small classes. Only with the possible exception of me, only the really brightest people across the world go, and it's not accessible to as many people as you would think. It's gotten better. It's gotten more egalitarian, if you will, in terms of admitting somebody who's not part of the aristocracy. Now it's more based on merit, and it's a great form of education. But I like the American form better. But look, I was taught by world's experts in the legal subjects that I studied, and the competition was great. And everybody, all of my colleagues that I met there, fellow students, they're all successful doctors or lawyers or business people, world leaders. You can't argue with the result.
Now, this is down. My last question has to do with the NBA gambling scandal that exploded yesterday. You know, Justice Jackson, the older, Robert Jackson, in Korematsu, said of that decision it was like a loaded weapon left lying around on the table. Well, legalized gambling on the internet is that to even places as lovely as Vandy, because they're competitive this year. People are actually betting money for Vandy to win in some games. It's pretty extraordinary. It's going to ruin college sports. It's got Cash Patel. You reproduce the exchange you had during his confirmation. I have confidence in him as well on this. But should you get organized and revisit whether or not it's a good idea to allow gambling on college sports?
Yes. Look, I'm pretty libertarian guy, but since they've introduced gambling not just in college, but in the pros, the professionals, we're going to see more and more and more of this. It's all about the money, and the reason the sports leagues, the colleges that get most of the money, not the kids, the NBA, the owners that have made hundreds of millions of dollars off this gambling, and the advertisers, they're interested in the money. I'm interested in the competition and the sport. I don't want to tell somebody they can't gamble. That's their business. But if it's being done in an illegal way to the extent that it jeopardizes your sport, it's time for us to step back and say, wait a minute, was this a good idea?
And
I think
I would add to that the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, they have enough resources to bring the hammer down and to police their borders and to impact guys who have a lot of money on the line. So does the WNBA. But they bet on, there's another investigation that came out last week. Not many people noticed it, of a half dozen to a dozen small colleges throwing games because everybody bets on everything now, prop bets. And if you're a kid from a mid-major and you're the third guy on the team, you're not going to get drafted. You're not going to go play in Europe. This is your chance to make some money. I just think colleges are going to be overwhelmed, Senator. They're not going to be able to keep up with this.
once you let it out of the bottle, it's hard to get it back in. But we've got to try. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. My God, I hope I'm wrong, Hugh. But I
No, I think you're
understand
right.
human nature, and it can
Yeah.
run professional and collegiate sports. Can run high school sports. And it really does worry me.
If we don't, I thought we banned, maybe we don't ban gambling on high school sports. I sure hope we do. Congratulations, Senator Kennedy. How to Test Negative for Stupid. It's on Amazon right now at #1. Go and order it. Get it whenever it's available. And I hope I'll see you again, Senator, when your next book comes out, because when you succeed with the first one, the publisher wants a second one. So stay funny and stay sharp.
Thank you, Hugh. Love your show, man.